Good day, everyone. My name is Kelli Prather, and I am the host of Kelli's Commentary. I have with me in the studio today a well-educated black man, and I have to give credit where credit is due. He is familiar with not only the revised codes of different states, he's also familiar with the black law, which is kind of intriguing. But on today's topic, before we get into today's topic and before I introduce my guest, I want to acknowledge the fact that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I am Kelli Prather, a survivor of domestic violence and gun violence. And so anyone who is in that situation, I just pray for your safety, I pray for your well-being, and I pray that you create a plan to escape that situation. I was speaking with my guest before we went on camera, and I said, to God be the glory that I don't look like my story, and I thank God that I am a living, breathing testimony. I thank God that I'm alive, for one, and I thank God that I'm a living, breathing testimony to be able to witness to someone who is in that situation in terms of how important it is that you value yourself before you value anyone else, and you create a way to get out of that situation, because God wants so much more for you. He wants so much more for you. But also, you all know that I'm running for Cincinnati City Council.
Yes, indeed.
And when you're a public figure, the good, the bad, and the ugly comes out. Mm-hmm. Since I had my guest, Michi Slay, on my podcast, my Facebook podcast, and on my TV show, the attacks have been coming in. I'm a firm believer that you're targeted when you're a threat, when you're bringing out information that's going to change the narrative of a situation, especially a negative narrative. And what Mr. Slay was giving us was just information regarding what did we talk about? The Social Security Act, the birth certificates, and how basically that could change the entitlements that African Americans specifically are need to be awarded from the government. So when you're talking about issues like that, you're a threat. You're a threat to bringing about changes that need to happen. So after our podcast, and I shared this with Mr. Slay before we came on, I started getting phone calls saying, you don't want to sabotage your campaign. You don't want to put yourself in a negative light. You don't want to seem like you're not credible. And I even got background information about Mr. Slay that, I welcomed him on my show. I said, I'm not the source. I brought the source to you. But information to kind of challenge his credibility.
That's correct.
And so I shared with him. But, just like when you're a public figure with me, there's no telling what they're going to try to throw out there. And so again, you just have to be strong enough to resist all odds or go against, to reject like the negative information and be able to justify what people are saying if you even feel the need to respond to some of that. So again, with the domestic violence issue, we talked about some accusations. He cleared that up, and I appreciate him talking about that, but that is not what this show is about. So again, I want to welcome you to the show, and I appreciate you being open and honest and fully disclosing and explaining to me. I wouldn't ask you to explain to the audience, but he did explain it to me.
Yes.
And so in terms of you possibly jeopardizing my career, I'm a firm believer that what God has for me is for me. And if it's meant for me to be in a position, I'm going to get in that position regardless of who is in my environment.
That's true.
I'm a firm believer that again, God will put Satan will put obstacles in your way to discourage you. And with me being really passionate, I think I shared with you on Tuesday, I'm really passionate about community reentry. Well, where community reentry is concerned, you have individuals who have created in society's eyes some of the most heinous crimes.
Yes.
And if I'm passionate about community reentry, I have to understand that people have had experiences that I don't necessarily agree with, that I would not support. But if I want them, if they pay their debt to society and they're in the community, I want them to be able to come home and to live with the understanding that they paid their debt to society.
That's correct.
And so another thing that I take issue with Mr. Slay is that people want to be they want to be judge, jury, and
executioner.
An executioner. Judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah.
So we have to change that.
Yes,
and so
definitely.
I don't judge people. I listen to your story. I allow you to give me feedback. And that's it.
That's correct.
And then we move forward.
That's correct.
So thank you again for
No
justifying, those accusations.
No problem.
And if there's anything that's going to hinder you from going where you need to go, I just pray for your safety, and I pray that all goes well.
Yeah,
And
definitely appreciate that.
you're not hindered. So, but today I want to talk about, people tend to talk about the negatives or the quote unquote failures, but they never talk about your successes.
That's
I
correct.
appreciate you showing me your successes, being able to testify in front of Congress and to talk about to move forward in some of the successes you've, in terms of having some false accusations thrown out in a court of law in front of judges. So I appreciate that. But today I want to talk about some issues here locally. Before I get started, since I gave my commentary up front, I want to give you an opportunity to just tell the audience who you are, where you're from, and what you do for a living.
Okay. Well, my real name is Demetrius Marwin Holder, as you know. I hold standing as a private attorney general. I've been doing this line of work since 2013, 2014. And what got me into doing this line of work was judicial corruption. Okay, judicial corruption is on a massive scale all across this country. So this is what really got me into learning what the administrative procedures is and how to go back after corrupt lawyers and judges. And also, I'm an ex-resident of Cincinnati. I've relocated to North Carolina, Raleigh to be exact. And I lived in Cincinnati for about, I want to say 15 years. 15 or 16 years.
So you currently live in Cincinnati?
No. I currently reside in North Carolina right now. Yeah,
Okay.
Raleigh, North Carolina. So, I'm just, back and forth. I just got out of the Supreme Court of Ohio. The Supreme Court, they rejected jurisdiction over my case.
Okay.
Because they believed there was some misleading evidence that, showed them that, the sheriff's department had, lied on their complaint, and they didn't want to deal with it, so they shot it back down to the Court of Appeals.
Okay.
So right now I'm going through a motion of, filing a federal lawsuit against those individuals that have misled me into believing that they're government and they're not.
Okay.
So.
Okay, and that's kind of over my head. I'm not.
Well, yeah.
I told you that I'm not an attorney. I'm a healthcare provider.
That's correct. Excuse me, I'm sorry for the sweat, but. Yeah. Like I said, that's a big problem that's going on in our country right now. Banking, with a lot of people signing off on false mortgages, fraudulent mortgages. As soon as you put your signature on the promissory note, the mortgage is paid. Okay, and this is not me saying this is our federal government and our federal regulations that are stating this as well.
Right.
Okay, this is also guaranteed under the Social Security Act. Okay, like I said, with a federal allotment given to every live birth certificate that comes into the state or that is issued by the state and sent to the federal government.
Okay.
Our birth certificates are sitting in the Department of Labor. Our birth certificates are sitting in the Department of Commerce. Our birth certificates are sitting in the Department of Education. So we are the credit of this nation. Okay, and that does not want to get out there. Okay. Like I said, we have members of a certain elected group that likes to, misconstrue the real laws. Okay, and the real laws are the statutes at large. Okay. These are congressional mandates and congressional records, acts of Congress that have been passed 2/3 House, 2/3 Senate. So, I've studied that, over a 20-year period. Okay, I have certifiable knowledge in law.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for
Not a
sharing
problem.
that. Now, again, I'm not an attorney. I'm
That's
a
great.
PhD student. I'm working on a PhD in public policy.
Yeah.
But a lot of the documentation that you gave me, I honestly, I have attorney friends.
Yeah.
Friends who I'll give them my legal documentation. I'll say, can you interpret this for me and kind of guide me? Now, they can't offer legal advice, but they can show me how to respond to motions, so on and so forth.
Correct.
And so what I have in my hand is the opinion and order of the United States Court of Federal Claims.
That's
okay,
correct.
so explain to me, what is this? What did you want me to see with this?
Okay, well, with this Court of Claims, I brought claims against the United States for judicial corruption.
Okay.
And the judge in this particular case, she made an opinion and memorandum saying that the court lacks subject matter jurisdiction.
Okay.
Now, that's because there were some things that were disclosed inside this case that technically that the court really couldn't handle. Okay, and I say this because the court of claims is where you bring your claims against the government. So if I caught judges and lawyers with their hands in the cookie jar, this is where we're supposed to go to address our grievances.
Right.
Okay, so she dismissed the case, but she didn't recognize that it was a tort claim. Okay, so she automatically became a party to this tort. Okay, so now this is the fourth judge that I had to go through to get to this point. Yes. Oh, yeah. Suing judges and lawyers is what I do good. Okay, because I can expose the fact that we're using a certain type of currency that makes our judicial system, our legislative system, and our executive branches of government private corporations. And that goes all across this country. Okay, the currency in this country is a facade. It's fiat. It has no intrinsic value whatsoever.
Okay.
Okay, and it went out of circulation back in '71. The United States dollar went off the silver standard back in, 1971. Okay, if you go back to October 27th, 1977, okay, a president at that time was Carter. Okay, and he came on national television telling you that what? Legal tender was no longer required for the payment of debt. Let that sink in for a minute.
Oh, wow.
If legal tender was no longer required for the payment of debt, why are we paying for anything?
Right.
Your signature should be sufficient enough to get whatever you need and want as a consumer.
Okay.
Okay, so this is why we have consumer protections. The FDCPA, which passed through the House and the Senate back in 1970. Okay, 70 between, like I say, 1970 and 1977 was a pivotal year of our monetary policy in this country. And it went straight to the dogs.
Oh, wow.
To where there is no money back in our, there is nothing tangible back in our currency, I should say.
Okay.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I've never heard that, and again, I'm not an attorney. And it's you're kind of speaking over my head, but
Well, yeah.
prayerfully someone will watch this, and
Yeah.
if I have questions, they can clarify for me. But I do
Okay.
appreciate
No
you
problem.
sharing that information. But I thought that it was interesting that you said that the federal court said that they do not have judicial
Well, they didn't have subject matter jurisdiction.
subject matter jurisdiction.
correct.
Wow.
Well, yeah, because they didn't want to prosecute their own.
Okay.
Okay, so if they didn't want to prosecute their own, then how can I be prosecuted across this country in any court?
Right. And then also you said that they became a party to tort, to a
That
tort.
is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, wow. So if a judge is presiding over a case
That's correct.
and they're familiar with the subject matter of the case,
That's correct.
then they automatically become subject.
They become defendants, yes.
Defendant,
Because if they're not following and holding up their oath, if they're not holding up their bond and their word to man and society, then you're defeating the purpose.
Wow.
Okay, so you become a defendant, and anybody who represents them, lawyer, doesn't matter. They automatically become a defendant as well.
Wow.
Because what they're doing, like I said, is they're misconstruing the meanings and terms of words. This is the exact same reason I brought this Black's Law Dictionary today.
Okay.
Because I wanted to point some things out in here. And what's in this book will actually shock you of the meaning and terms of words, like the word person.
Okay.
Let's just take that for instance. In general terms, we would be saying a person would be you and I.
Yes.
Okay, we would call ourselves person. But in this Black's Law Dictionary, it is defined as a corporation,
Okay.
a trust,
Okay.
a joint stock share, okay, an estate.
Okay. And that makes sense. That makes sense to me because, when you are in a civil case, like say I had a breach of contract lawsuit and I'm representing I'm a member of an LLC and I go representing the LLC, basically I'm a corporation. I'm representing the corporation
That's
as
correct.
a person. Okay.
That's correct.
And so I know that individuals can be found to be compulsive, complicit to tortious interference with the contract.
Oh,
They could
yeah.
be complicit
Oh,
to
yeah,
tortious
definitely.
interference with the
Definitely.
contract, but I had no idea that the judge can also be, if the judge is able to see like get all the evidence,
That's correct.
see where you have a right or
That's
you
correct.
are indeed an entity or a member of an LLC, and they have that knowledge, then they could be charged as with tortious interference of the contract and tortious interference of the case.
Oh yeah, yeah, tortious, because if that judge is saying that he is knowledgeable in law, then he is supposed to know the laws.
Yes.
To where this case has to be dismissed, this case has to be dismissed, or this case has been granted. Okay, if they're acting outside of that scope, then we hold them accountable.
Right.
Through the Federal Tort Claims Act.
Wow.
And that's dealing with what you have in your hand right there.
Okay.
See, the United States granted me permission to sue back in 2014 on that, right? They gave me that letter on my birthday. To say that, okay, I believe that it was a birthday present for me to gain remedy, because they had thrown their judges under the bus and said they don't work for the United States.
Wow.
Go ahead.
And Michi, this is so interesting, because there were certain cases when I reached out to some like really popular, like well-known attorneys here locally, and they would not take the case. And I wondered why they would not take the case. Now, with me having been blacklisted or blackballed, I'm thinking, okay, well, you know what? They don't want to touch it, but they didn't want to get their hands dirty because they didn't want to be responsible, and so now held accountable. And so now I respect the fact that they didn't want to be involved in this.
That's right. Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they knew what it was a lot deeper than they were willing to be involved with. And so now I respect them. Whereas before, I'm like, what do you mean you want to take this case? But as an occupational therapist, I know that there are certain things within the scope of my practice, and so I have a right to say, well, I'm not familiar with that, and so I'm going to excuse myself or recuse myself from this, and I'll refer you to this person.
That's correct.
And so I guess there's different attorneys who cover different areas of the law. But at the end of the day, the attorneys who I was able to articulate the the subject matter to, or the details of the case.
That's correct.
And they decided that no, they didn't want to have anything to do with it. I have to respect the fact that they didn't want to be bothered, because it's just that deep. It's that deep.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So going back to tortious interference with contracts, corporate, and what people, and this is a term that when people don't like to hear, and I think that we can all agree, when you think about the civil injustices that we've been subjected to, you could say that they've been responsible for corporate malfeasance.
Oh yeah,
corporate malfeasance.
Yeah,
because
restraining trade and all.
Yeah, as a corporation, as a business, I mean, especially as it relates to gentrification and unjustly getting people pushed out of communities, pushed out of their homes, pushed out of their commercial property. They've been liable for fraudulently, and it could be, I guess, I don't know the legal terminology for it, but I know what corporate malfeasance is, and systematic injustice, and that's basically what it is.
That all deals with tort. It all deals with tort. Because the law resides in everything. And when I say the law, I'm talking about natural law.
Right.
Do unto me as you would want me to do unto you. That's the only law that governs my life, technically. So, as we get into these laws of the land and we start understanding, wait a minute, how can the Ohio Revised Code apply to me if I don't work for the state?
Right.
Okay, that's governed by state agencies. That's what the Ohio Revised Code applies to. It applies to state agencies.
Right.
Okay, now there's only two state agencies in this state, and that's the Attorney General's office, and that's the Social Security Administration. In your federal building here, or in all the counties. There's a federal building in every county. But however, those are the only state agencies that we have. Okay, so if you're going to charge me under the statute, then there has to be some type of contractual agreement between me and the state that gets me to that compels me to perform on certain issues or certain topics. Like driver's license. Okay, when you sign up for a driver's license, what the state is reporting, what the county is reporting to the state, and the state is reporting to the federal government, is that they're paying you to drive your car. This is why you have to have a driver's license. This is why you have to have your car registered to the state. Okay, because of federal funding that's coming in from D.C., giving that state highway safety. Okay, but that's in commerce. That's only in commerce. Your private conveyance is not in commerce because you're not using your car to operate commercially.
Right.
Okay, when you're driving people back and forth, nobody's paying you to do that.
Right.
So technically, we do not qualify for a driver's license. Okay, so if we're using these,
I don't want to hear that because I like my driver's
well,
license.
okay, you do like your driver's license, but you don't qualify for it if you're not being paid to drive anything.
Oh, okay.
But see, that driver's license is dealing with federal funding that's coming from the federal, saying that they're paying you to drive. Have you been compensated for anything?
No. I've never been
So
compensated.
then that's a labor management dispute.
Oh, okay.
And guess who's managing it? You are.
Right.
Yeah, because
Wow.
without you, the driver's license can be funded or cannot be issued. Okay, so they're lying on a large scale. Okay, saying that each individual Ohioan is a commercial driver.
Right.
So that's something that we brought up in North Carolina back in 2011, where the Attorney General came in and threw everybody in the state under the bus and said they're all private individuals, even the governor's office.
Wow. This information is heavy. And what I think about, the one thing we didn't mention before we started is I want to give a shout out to Kabaka Abba.
Kabaka Abba, my
who
brother,
he was like a real activist,
Yes, he was.
right? Just true to who he was.
Oh, yes, he
I
was.
remember seeing him in 2001, between 2001 and I think like 2004,
Mm-hmm.
before I relocated to New York, just like in council chambers
Yeah.
speaking out about
That's
heavy
correct.
issues like this.
That's correct.
And I mean, he was so serious and so knowledgeable that sometimes the information would just go over my head.
Yeah.
And he was the type of person who he would spit some knowledge and he would make you say, I need to
Think about that.
think about that.
Yes.
I need to go back
Yes.
and this needs to be recorded so I
Yes.
can go back and listen to it.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm happy that we're getting this documented because I need to listen to what you're saying and try
That's
to get
correct.
a better understanding for myself.
Definitely.
But I mean, I do appreciate it and prayerfully Kabaka Abba, and I know he's
Yes.
resting peacefully.
Yes, so, yes.
He kind of served as one of the catalysts for me
yes.
to just be strong and
That's
to stand
correct.
on what I believe in.
That's correct.
And I would dare to say that just like myself, I mean, I'll tell anybody, I live for what I love and I will die for what I believe in.
That's right.
And it's just that serious for me. And at the end of the day, I love my people. And, if it's going to help progress, for the progression of my people, I'll stand on what I believe in. And if, I guess that would, if I died for it, I would become a martyr of sort.
Right.
And so Kabaka Abba was sort of a martyr because he stood for what he believed in, and his execution was just disheartening.
Yes, it was.
But the information that you're sharing is pretty much comparable to what he shared with the world, and so I appreciate him. And then what I started to say is that me getting into taking pictures is we lost. He was such a great loss to the city
Yes.
that I felt like somebody needed to follow his footsteps and document. I remember during the riots of the civil unrest of 2001,
Yeah.
he was out there taking some pictures, and he took some pictures of myself and my pastor, Damon Lynch III,
Yeah.
Iris Rowley, just that group, the Cincinnati Black United Front, that it was like, this is history.
Right.
I remember being,
That's right.
when our church was on Finley and Elm Street downtown, I
Yeah.
remember walking up the street with the NAACP. It was the Nation of Islam, and then Kwame Mfume
Yeah.
was president of the NAACP at that time. I remember him capturing those photos, and it was like, this is remarkable. So
Yes.
to come back to
Wow.
Cincinnati in 2014 and for him
Yeah.
to no longer be with us, that was disheartening because it's like the same level of unrest. But it's more, the system is working against us now. So
Well, yeah.
we weren't like
Definitely.
actively in the streets, but they like launched just an attack on our community that like never before. But we only have a couple minutes, and
Okay.
we haven't even gotten into the subject matter as far
Yeah.
as the
Sorry.
property that I wanted you to talk about. Talk a little bit about the Mill Creek property that your family owns.
Okay, well, certain members of my family, they bought the Mill Creek area back in, I want to say it was 1925. I have the world deeds here. But, and it's been passed down through the family, and it was always told to stay in the family.
Right.
Do not sell this to the city. Do not sell this to the county. Do not sell this to the state. Because our ancestors, they were so prime on having this land to call their own. And they knew about what was getting ready to happen with the money going out of circulation, and nobody can really own land unless they had gold or silver. Okay, so this property was bought legally and lawfully with gold, back stamps and silver as well. So it was just told to stay in our family, and I want to hold on to these deeds as long as possible, because I'm not gonna sell it to the state. I'm not gonna sell it to the city. I'm not gonna sell it to the county.
Okay.
Okay. If they come with an offer, no, it's already gonna be no, because property is gonna belong to my children.
Okay.
And their children on down the line.
Well, the good book says that you're supposed to have an inheritance
That's
that your
correct.
children's children reap from. So
That's correct.
So I support that and I respect that. And then now the same general area that you're speaking of, it is under construction. So if you have not been in that area, I advise you to go over to
I've
the
been
area
over
because
there. I've been over there. Yeah.
They're
But see,
already.
what they're gonna have to do is pay my family for this their renovation of this property.
Okay. All
Okay.
right.
Yeah, because
Well,
they have no lease with us.
Right. So I know that you say that your family's not interested in selling.
Oh,
You
no.
need to go ahead and make it public knowledge that
Yeah.
put it on record that this belongs to our family. But I mean, going back to just what we were saying about tortious interference with contracts, meaning
That's correct.
warranty deeds,
Mhm.
meaning business contracts, so on and so
Correct,
forth.
yes.
That's just another symptom. This is just
Oh, yeah.
further confirmation
Oh, yeah.
that it happens.
That's right.
And so that's why I'm saying go ahead and check on your property. I
Oh, yeah.
understand that you don't want to sell it for silver and gold, but they're doing what they want to do on it regardless.
That's
So
true.
you need
That's
to,
true.
if this indeed is your property, then you
Yes,
need
indeed.
to put it on record.
Oh yeah. Well, it's already been on record.
Yeah.
It's already been on record for years already.
Okay.
But from what I've seen when I went to go down to the county, they don't have it on record. It's been hidden for some strange reason, and they can't find.
Well, you have the records. Take the records down there.
Okay, but
get it
see, the
done.
thing is that I don't want them to take copies of this. Okay, for the simple fact is that if they're not going to allow us to build our own things on that land, then it's defeating the purpose.
Right.
And they don't want us to do that unless we're going through members of their elite. I'm not doing that. We can't do it because I refuse to sell out,
Okay.
and my kids will not sell out either.
Okay. Well, I appreciate having you on the show today. Thank you so
No
much for
problem,
the
no
information.
problem.
You're a stronger man than me because if I had a warranty deed to my property, I had proof I would be
Oh, yeah.
down there stomping.
Oh yeah,
Like,
oh yeah.
This is ours.
It's
You're not gonna do what you
all
want to
good
do.
because, like I say, whatever they build on that land, whose property is it?
It's still your property,
That's
but still you
correct.
need to be compensated. Your family needs to be compensated for that. But
Well,
to each his own, and you handle your
Yeah.
situation differently than I would handle mine.
Yeah.
But we have 1 minute left, so I just
Okay.
want to thank everyone so much for tuning into
Yes,
this
sir.
episode of Kelli's Commentary. I do have another show called Catching Up with Kelli.
That's correct.
Kelli's Commentary. Again, we started out the show giving support for individuals who are in situations where they are being abused. If you're in a domestic violence situation, please get help. Please develop an escape plan, and just know that my heart goes out to you. But thank you so much. Remember to check me out on KelliForThePeople.com. That's my website, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And Michi, I want to thank you again for coming on the show
Glad to be
and
here.
giving us some insight. I appreciate your candidness regarding your past. So
No
thanks
problem.
again. Have a good day. God bless. Kelli Prather. Goodbye.